Yo guys, what is up and welcome back for yet another episode of the Off Grid podcast. This is my third take. Come on, third time's a charm. Before I do any of these intros, I get myself sort of psyched up, do some exercise, get the heart going, so I get myself ready for a podcast introduction. Now, I'm psyched, I'm ready to go. This week's guest, I'm joined by Chaz Powell. Chaz is an adventurer, bushcrafter, ranger and expedition leader, the whole shebang. He is the explorer behind the Wildest Journey, where he walked 3 African rivers. And in this conversation, we talk about feeling trapped as a child and ending up in a young offenders institution, taking out a loan, aged 24, and flying to Bangkok, the value of travelling and not having a plan in life, walking a 137-day trek of the length of the Zambezi River, covering over 3,000 kilometres, facing death with near-fatal dehydration, and views on fame and feeling different to other adventurers. Hope you guys absolutely love this episode. On with the podcast. We're in. Chaz, welcome to the Off Grid podcast.
Well, thank you very much. Thanks for having me on.
Absolute pleasure to have you on, mate. I've really enjoyed doing the research for this podcast and seeing all of your sort of extravaganza, your adventurous life through the decades that you've been around the world. And it's really clear that from a young age up till now, there seems to be a need for wanting to feel free in yourself and in the world. Where do you think that all started for you?
Yeah, I mean, that is pretty much a good way to summarize it. I think I've always wanted to be free, and I guess like when you're on a journey, that is the ultimate freedom, isn't it? You're traveling, you're walking, you're hiking, you haven't got anything else to worry about. And this question I've had, and I always tried to go back in time and sort of try and think where has it come from? But I guess it's just a restless nature when I was young, and I think the generation I grew up in as well, we were outside playing all the time and building dens and, outside in the forests and constantly just wanting to be outside, adventuring in it. I guess I don't want to obviously say too much about the generation now, but a lot of people are outdoors less, aren't they? So I think when I was young, it was just constantly outdoors. I was cadets, scouts, just always wanting to do that. And I think in a classroom setting at a school, I was very restless. I wanted to be outdoors, and I think that's always been my calling, just being outside. And travel obviously goes hand in hand with that, because you go to all the most free places and the wildest places. And I think it's just one of that. I think you always have to think of something that you're passionate about and something that excites you, and most jobs don't normally, do they? But the outdoor sector has always been just really passionate about it, and really, obviously because of the negatives as well, the stuff that happens in the outdoors, like the deforestation and wildlife-based crimes. And I've always felt really passionate about protecting them, but also being in them, that I feel more at home. But that's a bit of a long-winded answer, but I guess that's my way of sort of summarizing how I got the freedom and why I need the freedom, just that call for the outdoors, really.
Yeah, and also it felt like, just through looking into a bit of your childhood, that there were a lot of things that you were perhaps at resistance with, like schooling, and ending up at age 19, like you describing yourself as like a troubled youth at that time, and sort of at conflict with the system around you. How would you describe that sort of experience as you're growing into a young man and thinking to yourself that, you almost feel kind of caged up by the world that you've been born into?
Yeah, I think when I was young, I think partly when I reflect on that period of time, so I was getting in trouble and I wasn't really going anywhere when I was in my teenage years. I was a bit rebellious, and trying to sort of reflect on that, it always makes me feel like I was just trapped a little bit, and I wanted that freedom that you say that I was craving. But I didn't know how to. I didn't want to necessarily. I did like a test at school where it summarised your qualities and things. And I know for a fact I put like wildlife and outdoors. It came back with engineering and computers, and that was just, it sort of threw me. It sort of stalled me a little bit, and I ended up doing like an IT course at college, and didn't really want to do that. And that even more so was like, I don't know. I did feel like a caged sort of young person who didn't really have any direction. And then it was only when I started traveling in my early 20s that I sort of realized, okay, this is me free now. And yeah, I was sort of growing into myself. But when I think back, I don't regret any of my life as such, but I always wish I'd found that a bit earlier on instead of having that rebellious nature about me. Maybe if I'd have even just gone in the military, I sometimes think about that. But yeah, I did. There was a few times I nearly did, but I think if I'd have just done something a bit more adventurous, I'd have been okay. But yeah, it was. I think that they call it the travel bug, don't they? As soon as you start traveling, it's difficult to stop, and that was, that is correct, especially if you find out that's what you want to do and that's what you enjoy doing. And yeah, that's probably one of the most difficult things now about not traveling, I suppose, is sometimes you have to stop or you feel like you need to. But
Yeah, you've spoken about that kind of that choices in life, the whole sliding doors scenario, which I think everyone probably experiences at that young age of like, you were thinking, do I go for the RAF? Do I go and travel around the world? And then the most unexpected thing happened and you ended up in a young offenders institution. Was that a
yeah.
point in your life where you thought, let's change course, or what was that experience for you?
Yeah, well, it was a wake up call. I think I realised, because I don't know about cocky. I wasn't really serious about anything, if you know what I mean, and I didn't really care about what I was doing, which was obviously the main problem. And pairing that with alcohol and youth, I was just a rebellious child. And as soon as I went to that young offenders institution, I was like, what? I can't be in here. This is just, you think about, yeah, I know it's a prison, isn't it? And you think about everyone who's put in there. I was next to people who were, I'd been in for drink driving and sort of petty theft as such. And I remember being in this room and I was sat next to a guy, and everyone was asking what each other had done, and he just said he stabbed someone 7 times in a phone box. And I was just sat there thinking, this is odd. This is just, and I was too scared to sort of say drink driving, you know what I mean? Because it was like, I know that's not a good thing, but at the same time, I knew that this is not a place I need to be. I can't be in here. And that did give me a kick up the backside. And yeah, as soon as I got out of there, I was just like, okay, that's it. I'm going to turn my life around. And but also by that time, it felt like it was a bit late. I think in your teenage years, you're 16, 17, 18, that's just time you're setting yourself up as such. And I got to the stage where I had to escape the way I was living, because I was ended up clawing back into possibly going down that route again. And I went to work at Butlins, which saved me, Butlins holiday camps. And it was one of the most, everyone is sort of even now, 20 odd years ago, people are still like, that was the best time of their life, working there. It was like a load of young people, going out together and working together. And it was a really cool place. And it was the first time I escaped where I was and sort of made me realize that I can meet new people. I can sort of do different things, travel to different places. And after that, I as soon as I left, I was there for a couple of years and left there and traveled and didn't really look back after that, and it was a continual escape from that 19-year-old who had been locked up in a place that he didn't feel like he wanted to be or should be, and I know, like, I always try and justify my behavior as such, but if my sons were doing that, I'd be, it's just, completely out of order. You shouldn't. And alcohol, and I don't drink anymore or anything like that. Not because of that time, just because throughout my life it's just grown to, yeah, just sort of realize what's good for me and what's not. And that obviously that period of time was the worst period of time in my life, I'd say.
Wow. Okay. It's amazing how I think we can all relate to something that happened to us, in our formative years. That is, yeah, I mean, you could describe it as something that's driving you, but equally something that you're running from as well.
Yeah.
And then you got to, went through Butlins, age 24. You got a loan and flew to Bangkok? What's the
Yeah.
story there?
So after Butlins, I actually got sacked from Butlins. I was still a bit of an idiot back then, it was one of them. But most of us did. But most of us would go out drinking, we'd turn up late, and all that sort of stuff. But I remember thinking about my next chapter. Once again, this was a time I nearly, I looked at the military as an option, didn't do it. I think 3 times I've been to the careers office, the army careers, and nearly signed. The last time being a time when they said, "Oh, we got 6 month waiting list," and I just said, "No, I'm gone." But then that time I was looking at all different options, and my friend who I went traveling with, he was like, "Well, actually, I was looking at cruise ships, I was looking at all these other things, and what can I do?" So I wanted to work, I wanted to do stuff, and then he was like, "Oh, let's just go backpacking," and I was like, "Well, that's going to cost me money. I haven't got money," and then, like say, I've got a loan, and just like a spur of the moment, let's go. And we went around, Thailand. Um, in Singapore, bought an old car, driving across Australia. We hitchhiked across New Zealand. It was just a crazy. I think that was about 6 months that trip. But then after that, I came home and I was like, okay, that's now my direction, I suppose. And I'd work odd factory jobs and go out again, and that was a continual cycle till 2012. I think it was 2004 till 2012 was just back and forth. Didn't really study or anything. I was just traveling and learning about different cultures, communities, different areas, just trekking, hitchhiking. And once again, it wasn't a time of social media, so I was just out there, and then I didn't really speak to many people. I'd just send postcards here and there. They'd turn up, and just a really cool time, to travel. But it wasn't, let's say, till 2012 I came home, and then I was in my early 30s, and I'm thinking I need to really not have a career, but I need to sort of go in a direction here. And started to be a bit more in tune with mountain. I got a mountain leader award. I was teaching bushcraft. I was obviously planning more remote expeditions as obviously the ones that got me a bit more in the limelight as such, with the big African rivers. But it was it's just been a lifetime of, like you say, choices. Like we started, there's different choices. Which way do I go here? And it was a continual escape from that 19-year-old.
There seems to be this like this need for this young man who's exploring the world and adventuring, coming back, earning money, and going straight back out in a time where I think most people are starting to think about, what they're doing with their lives, and this idea that, in Western society, people are asking, what's your passion, what's your purpose, and they kind of want to categorize you into what you're doing with your life. Did you feel like you were kind of at conflict with these societal views of as to what you should be doing and in your 20s?
I think I remember being just constantly like that. Even now, I think somewhat, I think I'll never sort of escape that sort of, because everything, if you think, obviously I like to think deeply, and I'm an overthinker, but everything's sort of just been created, hasn't it? All these careers and the way we should live, and et cetera, et cetera. And I think I was just thought, hang on, this doesn't seem right. And I just wanted to just think, you've always got to constantly feel what is important to me, and like I say, what do I enjoy? And I never really could feel that, in my 20s and teens. I was like, okay, maybe if that test had turned out and said, you should be working with wildlife, you should be in the mountains, and then that would have been like, okay, that's normal. But there always seems like there's been a few sort of tricky points, and like say society sort of tries to get you to follow a certain path, doesn't it? And it could be your family, or it could be the school you grew up in, or the community you're in, and what's seen as being the correct choices, and whatever else. But I'm a good believer in obviously doing the right thing and trying to make a life for yourself, but at the same time, a lot of young people can't think that much into it at that age. I don't think, and it's a very difficult time, I found anyway, but yeah, so it is. Like I say, even now, I'm always like, I'll notice little. I think I'm quite good at reading people. I'll notice things when don't seem quite right, and I'll have to try and follow a path that I feel is the right way to be, and work in the right institution or sort of organisations, and but it's an ongoing thing, I think, possibly, but.
Yeah, and a lot of people kind of go from one step to the next, following this path that's laid out for them. Like get good grades, go to uni, get the grad role, and there's almost no gap to think what it is you actually want to be doing with your life. What do you think people can gain from giving themselves the richness of time and a sense of just wandering, traveling, maybe even a sense of aimlessness?
What do you mean, like the traveling instead of doing all of the career stuff? And
yeah, like if you reflect back on those years that you spent just traveling around the world, of what society might say, oh, you need to really, fall in line with a purpose or a career or whatever. What do you think those types of people miss by just going out there and seeing the world?
Yeah, I think I'm a little bit envious of the people that have done that. They've done their career. I mean, they've got their degree, they've got their sort of movement in life where they want to be, because that seems like the adventure industry especially seems to be more that than more what I've done, I suppose. But it seems like people have got a university degree, they've got a direction, and they continue that, and I'm quite envious of that. But at the same time, I think people who don't ever travel, I think that, I don't know, I feel like I'm not putting words into people's mouths, but I feel like when they get older, they really do regret that, don't they? And they're going to be like, if only I'd have. That's the most common thing, isn't it? People just saying, I wish I'd done this, wish I'd done that. And if you travel while you're young, even just the town I grew up in, we've got some great friends there, but most of them, or a lot of them, all they know is that town, and they've never really expanded their mind. And anyone that's coming in from outside, who are they? And it's like, you can't live your life like that. You've got to travel, you've got to open your mind, you've got to explore, you've got to push your comfort zones. And doing that from a young age, I think, I hope it's made me a more wise person. But yeah, I think that people who don't, then the continual, like you say, they've only got a little bit of time to think about the next step, etc. They need to pause, I think, and just sort of, even that little next step, maybe 6 months away, doing something, I think is good. And which I find is that if I could go back and do it again, I'd probably get the qualifications I need, do some travel, then pursue that with the travel, if you know what I mean, because it probably would be an outdoorsy based thing. But yeah, I don't know. It's everyone's different, aren't they? And everyone's got everyone follows a different path, and the path that's laid out in front of you, you've got to choose the right direction. And I think I was just really just went with the flow. Maybe that's the best way to sum me up, is whatever feels right and whatever path seems the best direction, I followed that. And yeah,
and that's the only way to do it, really, because I'm going through 20s at the moment. I'm 26, and there's so many points where you're just wondering what the hell you're doing.
Yeah.
And
what have you done so far of your life then at 26?
So I did go to uni, and then ended up starting a trekking business from there for a year. Then went traveling for a year, came back, got a narrowboat. Now start the podcast, living on the boat in London.
So this sounds like, I mean, let's say the people that, I think you did it in the right order. If I had to think of myself and that troubled period, I'd have liked to have thought I'd done the same, gone to uni, set myself up, then like I say, starting a business at your age is incredible, isn't it? And then obviously you've got the travel bug, and you live in sort of off grid in a sense, and similar to me, but I'm obviously 20 years older. So yeah, I think you've done it in the right order. And
Well,
if I had to advise people, I'd say, yeah, similar to what you've done yourself, and keep doing it, you know?
yeah, and I think, you know, what you say is you can only trust yourself, because everyone's going to have an opinion as to what you should be doing.
Yeah.
But it almost feels a little bit like when you're reflecting back on your childhood, um, maybe is there a sense of you that kind of still wonders what would have happened if you had joined the military?
Uh, I think what would have been the most ideal for me as a person, if I'd have joined the military at 16, 17, then done that for 4 years, just to get that period of time out of the way, I think, because I needed probably a good sort of like bit of discipline and a bit of direction. And I think, you know, I would, and I think now if I could join the military in my own brain now, I wouldn't, because I just don't think I'd want to go into that situation. But when I was young at that age, that was always what I wanted to do during school, you know, but I just lost my way. And yeah, I think it would have been useful for me during that period of time, instead of obviously going down that of a rabbit hole of criminality or whatever it was I was getting involved with. And yeah, maybe that would have set me up better, because I don't think I'd have been like you. I don't think I'd have gone to university. And I don't know, I just wasn't really academic. I think I was more hands-on and like you know, outdoors, wanted to do something. So that probably would have suited me better, just to do that period of time, perhaps. But
Yeah, and it's also interesting how what what you ended up kind of feeling in those early years, like being lost. It's almost what ended up being what you're really good at, is going to these extremely remote places where you don't
yeah,
really know where you are, what you're doing, and being able to work it out. And obviously, like all of these travels, all these adventures have led to like some of your bigger ones, like walking the Zambezi River, 137 days, over 3,000 kilometers. What are these expeditions to you when you look back on them as to things that you've done in your life? How do you see them?
um, the Zambezi, you know, I mean, like the travel I'd done before the Zambezi was, let's say, like the 8 years of sort of backpacking and no real direction. And then when I came home and I did the Mountain Leader Awards and got myself quite qualified with you know, being a leader and outdoors and things like that. And the Zambezi was like a point in my life when I thought, okay, I need to test myself. I've been relatively safe. I've now gone out and I've got some skills and some experience and some qualifications and a hell of a lot of travel experience. And I need a test. And I think, I don't know, maybe similar to what I was saying a minute ago about the military, I possibly always needed some kind of test and put myself in a situation where I was being, I don't know, tested. And I've always been really quite good at being uncomfortable in the outdoors. And the Zambezi was like, okay, I need to push my limits. I want to travel like explorers used to do. I don't want to really have any kind of support. I want to just go out there and hike in a remote area and see how I get on, sort of thing, you know. And I couldn't have picked, you know, my eyes, like the reason I call it the wildest journey as well is like I'm going to take on the wildest journey in my life at this point. And it's obviously it's come since I did it. You know, I had no aim at all into really even advertising it. I made a Facebook, an Instagram page in the end, but I just wanted to go out and do it, you know. And I didn't have any kind of charity I was lined up for doing. I didn't have any kind of, I never contacted anybody about it really. It became like people contacting me, you know, there's people contacting me, we're doing this, because I didn't really think about how big it was as such. You know, I thought, okay, I'm walking a river and yeah, it's remote, but when I look at the bigger picture of exploration, you know, from the past and things, you know, I think walking the Africa's rivers is a pretty iconic thing to do, but also it stems from like the Victorian explorers, isn't it? Livingston and Stanley and Speke and all these people that used to go out and to explore remote areas. And I feel like the Zambezi was one that was still like, I couldn't find out a lot about these places. And, you know, it was obviously one of the craziest things I'd done. And it did set a benchmark for my adventures. And, you know, obviously I didn't think about that at the time. And then obviously since then I've done a couple more rivers, but then I've never really been up, you know, it's a little bit like a triangle, you know, like a pyramid. I've gone up to that point, Zambezi, and then now I've slowly started coming away. So it was a bit like a period of time in my life where I was in my mid-30s. I felt like I was the fittest and wisest to start taking on adventures like that, and I ended up going out and pushing myself to that level. And then obviously, as soon as I hit my 40s, the pandemic was one of the reasons I didn't do more, because I think I wouldn't have stopped, to be honest. But not that I've stopped adventure, just to that scale. You know, obviously since then I've now got a young family and stuff, so I'm a different sort of person now. But yeah, that was the pinnacle, I'd say, of my life. Getting to a point where I'm now not making a name, because you know, that 19-year-old kid that was locked up with all these other people, you know, that is a mile away from who that person was who went on that walk, you know. So I've started to sort of think, okay, I've reached a point now where I can. And also you reflect on your whole life. You're walking for 137 days, you reflect on everything that's happened previously, and you're then coming out the other side of that with, you're a completely different person in a way. And you know, if you're, I don't know, it's just, I've probably gone on a real tangent with this, but
that's great. How would you describe the difference between that Chaz at the start and the Chaz at the end of that 137 days?
Well, the Chaz at the start was very, very naive. Maybe, well, saying that it wasn't naive, that's probably the right word. Just a bit like unexperienced to that extent, if you know what I mean. I think if I could think of an ultimate training test to walk in remote areas, I'd say walk the Zambezi or something, you know, because I think every day I was like sort of thinking, I'm going to die, you know, this is like something's going to kill me, because it was insane. And the amount of challenges you have to get yourself through, whether that's walking through these remote areas or the tribes or the conflict in certain areas, the insects, you know, the mosquitoes, the crocodiles, the lions, the elephants charging at me through bush, you know, it was constant like that. And I think I had a lot more respect for people who have nothing. That's one thing, you know. Obviously went in with that, with like, I'm this outsider who's sort of say unexperienced, but also a bit sort of not sure about people as such, you know. And you know, I don't know, people are, it's obviously a bit of a cheesy one, but the people who have nothing, you know, they're not greedy, they give things away. And I think, I don't know, I just learned to be more like them than someone who needs things, you know what I mean? Like saying, a lot of adventurers, we constantly need to sort of do something or make a name, continue with that name. And I think I just thought, you know, I'm no different to these people living along this river, and they're so humble and so kind, and I'd rather be like them than trying to be something I don't feel like I want to be. I don't know. It's a lot of overthinking along them rivers, and a lot of contemplating things, and I think I just came out of it a bit more sort of grounded and a bit more. It's hard. I mean, like, anytime you go traveling, like, you probably speak to yourself. You're in London or somewhere, and no one's speaking to anybody, are they? And you're also like that yourself. You're sort of conditioned to sort of stay away from people and be wary of stuff. And as soon as I came back from that, you know, I'd just be on the train talking to everybody. You know, you're a completely different person, and it doesn't take long to go back to that original sort of mindset. But at the same time, you evolve so much that you've been around, you've needed people's help, but they've just give it you. You know, the kindness of strangers is massive when you're in a remote area. But yeah, I was a different person. It's hard to really explain the two people. But when I look back at even pictures, I'm like, this guy is not the same. I lost obviously a lot of weight and stuff, and I've been through craziness, but I was very grateful for my life, because I nearly died a few times. Very grateful for people helping me, and very sort of very focused on doing better. I think like say the 19-year-old once again. I wanted to move away from being that person, and I think that after the Zambezi, when you learn from these people that have got nothing, you just want to be a better person. And I feel like I was probably a better person. Maybe that's
Yeah,
probably the best way to finish that sort of explanation. Maybe, but
it sounds like you're just experiencing the extremes. The ultimate generosity, and then also the ultimate greed, and feeling love, and then feeling danger, and you're kind of experiencing the whole of humanity in this one adventure that you're doing. What would you say that you've learned about humanity through all these adventures that you've done around the world and different cultures and meeting different people?
Humanity. I mean, let's say that probably that little thing about people who've got nothing give the most, and I think I don't know how to sum up humanity. I think we're in a Western world. We really are sort of, I don't know. It's like we're constantly reading from a script as such. We've sort of lost our true identity in a way. I mean, this is obviously really deep stuff, but the people that have got nothing, they don't want anything. They're living their life. They've got their water. They've got their whatever it is. And we've in the society outside of that, we're constantly feeling like similar to the career. We feel like we've got to follow this path, and we've got to get this, we've got to get that, we've got to tick that off the list, and that never really stops, does it? I think it's like, I don't know, it's just a continual. And humanity is a really difficult question, but I think that we're so diverse and so different that also myself, I respect everyone's ways, and I feel like I do, but I think I'm very much constantly in the middle with what's right and wrong. And like you say before, is you've got to do what you feel is you're passionate about and what's right for yourself. And humanity is a very complicated set of people, isn't it? And I mean, I see like in Africa, even when I try and think about the people, I was pushed and I was beaten. I went through so many bad points, but so many really positive points. So as far as humanity, I came out feeling very mixed, but I always focused on the positives, because if you focus on the negatives, you'll be a constant nervous wreck, But I have to focus on that. I feel that's something you have to do, isn't it? And humanity, we see all the time that there's so much unfairness in the world with the wars that are happening, and the way people are treated in different places. And it's a really complex category, isn't it? Humanity, but
it's a tricky one that I think we're all trying to work out. Particularly depending on, you're born into a culture, you're born into a certain society, and then you're thinking, okay, so who am I within this, and do I agree with that? And that's when the introspection comes in. But you mentioned earlier the dangers that you faced out there. One of them was your sort of near fatal dehydration that you experienced when you were walking along the Zambezi. Can you explain how you ended up getting to that point of thinking I could nearly die here?
So this is it's one of the most popular sort of stories as far as what happened along the river. But as soon as I hit the Victoria Falls, which is about the midway point, the falls drops down into a huge gorge, which passes through the land for about 150 miles. And the time of year when I walked was the hottest time of year. And the reason being for that was to get through the Barotse floodplains, which is underwater most of the year. So I needed the water to obviously be low enough to walk through. And it wasn't necessarily, but it got me through, if you know what I mean. But when I reached the gorges, there was dry land everywhere. It was October, which is the hottest time of year in Zambia, and the only water was really down in the river. So when I set about walking, I had to walk. I'm always reliant on water, and water was obviously the only way I could get through this journey. Was drinking, obviously having drinking water because of the temperatures and obviously other stuff. But so when I got down into the gorge, I realised I wasn't getting anywhere because it was boulders, just boulder field all the way down, and very narrow little stretches to get over. And I was up and over rocks and really difficult walking. After, I think it was about 10 days, I was down there, and I calculated that I'm not going to get anywhere doing what I'm doing. I was maybe doing 2 miles a day, and that was continual climbing over boulders and blah, 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 and before that I've been walking obviously nearly 20 odd miles a day at times. And so I contemplated that I wasn't going to get anywhere, and I had to go to plan B, which was looking on the map and finding another tributary to the river that was above me on the land, and trying to get a set of bearing to walk to that tributary. And I underestimated the difficulty in that task. And when I got to the top of the gorge, I started climbing up the gorge at 4 a.m. Probably took me a couple of hours at least to get out. And I only had a couple of liters. I only had 2 liters of water, which I carried with me, and because I was always near a river, so I just top it up. But so I'd run out of 1 liter when I got out the gorge, and the temperatures were high 40, like 48, 49 degrees Celsius. And I was at the top of the river, top of the gorge was just a series of other little hills and gullies going into the main gorge, and loads of overgrowth, loads of thorn bushes, and dry, barren land. And I ended up on this compass bearing and just losing it every 10, 20 seconds because it was up and down around bushes. And and then after like an hour of doing that and sipping water, it was like 50 degrees and just insane. I started to get really overheating really badly, and realizing that this was not the right decision. So I tried to, because I was obviously in a different place, I went to try and get back down into the gorge, and I was faced with just a sheer cliff, dropping down into the gorge. And by that point it was like, okay, I can't get down that. I can't continue. I can't go back to where I was. I don't even know what that is. So I was sat now in a little bit of patchy shade, and that was the point where I thought, this is too much, and I had to activate my satellite phone, because that's the only support I had, as a satellite phone, like an SOS on that, and activated that, to and fro between the contact center for that and myself. And just basically got to the end. It was probably a few hours of communication, and I was just getting more and more ill, and ended up drinking my own urine. So thirsty, it's hard to explain, it's because it was only, you think about a day without water, it doesn't feel like much, but I just got ill. I got really ill, overheating, like signs of heat stroke. And it was just too hot, and I couldn't do anything about that. And I just, even just like the sensation of, not being able to get, like, trapped in a way, once again, trapped, I can't get down, I can't get that back. I'm trapped in this situation. And it was just a very overwhelming situation. And I remember getting to the stage where I was in and out of consciousness with it. And the control center for the satellite phone said, we're going to get you a helicopter, but it's going to come later this evening. It's got to come all the way from South Africa. There's nowhere else they can get it from. And then at that point, when they said that, I said, look, I don't know if I said it to them. I can't quite remember the context, but I just said to myself, perhaps, I'm not going to be alive then. I need to do something about that. I'm sort of really in trouble here. Obviously not many times in my life I've felt that, but I said, if I don't do something about this, I'm in a lot of trouble. So I went back to the cliff, and I was looking at it obviously a bit differently, and I could see little roots hanging out and little ledges here and there. And then to cut the long story of that short, I just went for it, and I was scraping down the side, and I dropped so far and made it to a ledge, and I fainted, and blah blah blah, and I got myself back down and fell in the water, and to drink about, I don't know how many liters of water in a short space of time, and just kept guzzling water down, keeping my body cool in the water until I could actually sort of think straight again, and sort of activate my SOS, the satellite phone, to tell them that I was back to safety and I didn't need help. But then I went back on myself along the river, because I couldn't, to try and get out, and I got out to a road, and by that point there was a search party looking for me, and it was just, yeah, a lot of stuff I didn't realize what was happening behind the scenes, which I was obviously very appreciative of. But it was crazy. Yeah, that was the craziest point. Like I say, like with my life, that point where you meet the pit, the what's the name, the pyramid, and then similar on the Zambezi, and that halfway point where I've reached a really crazy point, and then the other side, I'm coming back with a bit more carefulness and trying to do things a bit more sort of, I don't know, because I got really cocky, and I think a period of time where I was confident, I was walking, and I was progressing really well. And yeah, I hit a point there where I was like, okay, this is a real wake-up call once again in my life, where I need to just give my head a wobble, and just really think about the next steps and what I'm going to do, and continue more professionally. Like I say, it was a very steep learning curve, and yeah, even things like that, I look back and how much I appreciated being alive after something like that, and all these little notches throughout your life where you have these little stumbling blocks. You've got to learn from them instead of being sort of down about them as such, because I never had any sort of negative feeling about that as such. I just thought, okay, I'm really appreciated the fact I've got out of that and I'm alive, and now I'm going to be doing things differently. I'm going to be that person that now thinks a bit more, thinks a bit more about not just myself, but my family and friends at home that I'm going to be possibly losing if I die during these situations. So yeah, it was that was the sort of, the point where I thought, okay, this is too much. But yeah,
Very serious stuff. Yeah, I mean, you go on these adventures and you're looking for the wild, you're looking for the experience of it all, and then yeah, when it ends up to those moments like that, that's probably the moment, yeah, where you do start thinking about others, and maybe why you're doing it in the first place. Did you ever think that what you were undertaking was did it feel ever like a selfish endeavor?
um, it did towards the end, because I was very stubborn about finishing it, and I was questioning, because Mozambique, I probably mentioned the fact that obviously, like, the humanity aspect, but in Zambia I was getting so much help and support, and in Mozambique was the opposite, because they were coming out of civil war. They were very suspicious. It was very difficult, and in the end I was just like thinking, what am I doing? What am I doing? Why am I even doing this? Because I'm obviously putting my life in danger, but also I'm going through areas where I shouldn't really be walking because it's sensitive. And that was the time where I thought, I'm selfish, because all I want to do is finish this walk. I don't know. It's like I've always like, I don't know how to summarize that without sounding selfish, but yeah, it's like, okay, I want to do this, and that's always how I've been in life. I want to complete. I'm quite, I say, challenge focused. Maybe maybe that's why I would have been good in the military as well, because I want to just be set out and do something, and do it well, and complete a task. And I think the Zambezi, like any time I've ever done any kind of UK based challenge, I've always said, even if I'm can't walk at the end, I'm going to finish it. That's always the mindset. I've got to do it. And the Zambezi was the same, but obviously for a longer period. And yeah, but then you sort of have so much time to think that you start to feel I'm selfish for continuing on. After that incident in the gorges, I was going to quit. I was going to finish, but it took me a week or so of reflection to say, you know, I'm trying to walk Africa's wildest river, and I'm going to expect, you know, this to happen. So let's get it done, and let's think differently. And yeah, it got challenging, that, because that the danger never really goes away, you know, because you want to finish it, but you're still constantly faced with danger. So you're in a strange sort of headspace with it all. But
one thing that strikes me about you, Chaz, is a lot of these adventurers, you know, get back from their expeditions and then they tell as many people about it as possible across, you know, social media and talks and things like this. But you've spoken about how you just aren't fussed by fame and feeling different to perhaps other adventurers that did go to uni or had a different background to yourself. Is there part of you that sort of feels different? And if so, like why do you think that you feel different to other adventurers out there?
well, I don't know, maybe it just stemmed from my upbringing, and not my upbringing, but that period of time in my life where I don't feel like I was worthy of being mentioned. You know what I mean? Because I was this kid that was just an idiot, and maybe, like, I don't know. A lot of the other adventurers have got a really good resume of what they've done and who they are, and to be proud of as such. And maybe it stems from the fact that, you know, I don't feel like I've got that lineage of cool, you know, like I say, like, it's only the last couple of years I've actually mentioned that part of my life as well. I would never really used to mention it, but I think now I'm just at the stage where, you know, I've got to be a bit more honest about where I've come from and who I was and how I've changed, and I've quite enjoyed opening up about that sort of stuff. But yeah, so I don't know. Maybe I'm not going to say I haven't enjoyed these glimpses of a little bit of standing on a stage talking, because I never would have done that as a young person, but now I can quite happily do it. And that's also like, you sort of have to you have to get over yourself, you know, and think, I don't know, you either have to be there very professionally, or you have to get over yourself and just talk and be open. And I think I'm more that now than I am trying to be a professional sort of wanting to be on the stage and be filmed and blah blah blah. I don't know. I've shied away from it, but I think the reason, I just never set about with that mindset. And I think sometimes I'll see someone with a mindset, and it feels to me like they're only setting about it because they want to be famous. I'm not gonna. I don't know. I could just be wrong, but sometimes that's how it feels, and that's put me off a little bit sometimes. I don't know.
The idea that they want to do it to get famous as opposed to they want to do it to actually do the thing.
Oh, I don't know. There's so many people I've spoken to, and they want it to be filmed first and foremost, and they want it to be a documentary, and they won't do it otherwise. And even when I was looking for people to help me support me on the Zambezi, there was one guy. Once again, I'm not going to mention it, but he would only do it if it was filmed for National Geographic or blah blah blah, and he didn't want anything to do it otherwise. And I only wanted to do it because it was a very, very cool journey that I was passionate about doing. And I think, if you know what I mean, there's a different sort of scale. And I'm not saying I mean, yeah, I've done talks, and even I was talking to yourself, and I do things, but I'll do them more when I'm asked, if you know what I mean. Because I'll never say no to doing something like this, or to standing on a stage. So I just feel like it's a privilege, you know. And there's not many times in my life I get to talk about this stuff. You know, I don't really talk about this with my friends, and they're not interested in what happened along the Zambezi, you know, really. And they might say they are, but you start talking about it, it's, oh, here we go. You know, it's just one of them. But so it's good. But yeah, I don't necessarily put myself out there enough, which I think if I had done, I think I'd have, yeah, I could have created more, if you know what I mean. I could have possibly done stuff, but I've never had any kind of marketing background for a start. So maybe that's a part of it. I just haven't really marketed myself right, or maybe it's just the fact that I'm just happy to have whatever there is, you know. But I don't know. It's a funny one. It's hard to speak about stuff like that without sort of being a bit cynical about other people, if you know what I mean. I don't want to do that, but it just feels sometimes that the intentions aren't quite pure with some, but I don't know.
Yeah, I'm sure many would agree. Chaz, thanks so much for giving an insight into your life, your adventure, but most importantly, your introspection. I've been very intrigued by the questions that you ask yourself and of the world. And you're clearly a thinker that wants to sort of find reason and find meaning in the things. So thanks a lot for an insight into that and for sharing your journey.
That's my pleasure. Thank you very much, Jake, for inviting me along.
Cheers, Chaz.
Cheers, mate. Thank you.